What happened? The world's coming apart. It's like there's nothing we can do about it. And those in charge seem more concerned about being where they are with what they got than what's going on everywhere else. And we sure can't fend for ourselves anymore. Come on, what happened to us? I still can't figure it out. I mean, where are we? Or I guess, how'd we get here? Do you remember anything? Or is it all just a blur to you too? I know every time I try and put my finger on it, it always has something to do about politics and money. You know what I mean. It seems like you can't separate politics and money from any of our problems. And you can't even separate them from each other anymore, no matter how hard you try. Fame and fortune are joined at the hip, and once these politicians reach that point, they're on easy street. And really don't have anything to worry about our problems anymore. Oh, and no matter what happens, they also never have to worry about being one of us average Joes anymore either. And they're all so brazen about it. It's almost like they shove our faces in it, knowing we can't do anything about it. So stuff like good intentions don't have a chance against politics and money, because the road to hell, well, you know what I'm talking about. Just look at how these Tea Party folks started pounding their chests after beating up their Republican House Majority Leader Eric Cantor in a Republican primary. Remember? Now, I don't care what you think about their politics, but I got to tell you, from their point of view, with this guy Cantor looking after his big business buddies, they had good intentions. Of course, right after he loses, he falls into a job with a Wall Street financial company for $3.5 million a year. You could tell by that smile on his face on election night that he made off like a bandit after losing, even though Congress only worked a little more than 100 days last year. That's an average of 2 days a week for $175,000 a year. Of course, he's probably not going to have to work even that much for the $3.5 million, considering there's no sense in lobbying Congress when they're not there. And think about it. What could the qualifications for that job be for someone who's never even made change from a cash register? You know, it's all about his access. So now he's only going to have to work getting his buddies in the house to do what the folks who are paying him all that money want him to do. Gee, do you think they will? They always have, because that's the way the game is played. Boy, the Tea Party showed him. And then you got this guy, Trent Lott. Remember the former Republican Majority Leader of the Senate, who took $1 million job. He just took $1 million job lobbying for Russia against the United States sanctions because of their invasion of the Ukraine. Yeah, Russia against us. Now he's on their side. Well, in case you don't remember, he quit the Senate to become a lobbyist for the cell phone industry to pass the Telecommunications Act on the advice of his son, who had quit his job at Domino's to become a lobbyist for AT&T, to lobby his dad when he was a senator. Yeah, from a Domino's to $1 million lobbyist job to lobby his dad. It would have been funny if his dad didn't listen to him, but that didn't happen. So then he helped his dad pass that act that prevents limitations on the amount of harmful radiation from cell towers. No limits and nothing you can do about it. All that radiation coming into our homes from cell towers 24 hours a day, especially if you've got one nearby. And trust me, it may not look like a cell tower, but you've got one nearby, cooking your organs and preventing you from getting a good night's sleep. And for those of you who don't think the government could do that to us, just look at the medical and science reports on the internet about how cell towers are poisoning us for money. Now, do you think Lott has trouble sleeping at night as more and more people get cancer from that radiation? I doubt it. I doubt that all those other senators and House members have lost any sleep because they went along with their buddies' wishes, just like it's going to happen with Cantor. You know, there's a million of these stories within stories that I can't even begin to think about anymore. Maybe what we need to do is kind of divide them up between us and report back what's going on. I mean, there's so much out there that we just hear about in the headlines that we can't get out of our minds. Like these atrocities committed by ISIS, the beheadings of American journalists and Christians who refused to give up their beliefs, and all the women and children taken hostage and sold into slavery by that enterprising group of cowards, or the 400 Nigerian girls taken hostage by Boko Haram and subjected to who knows what. I know I'd be thinking about them every night before my My kids fell asleep until I knew they were safe. But watching our president leave on one of his many vacations with his wife and kids, you wonder if he's thinking about how these families could possibly cope with what happened. Or you wonder, as we watch him line up a putt as he's playing another of his rounds of golf, whether he misses it because he's thinking about the horrors of the beheadings, or maybe wondering what happened to those girls and maybe thinking about how lucky his girls are. Or maybe he's not. As he says, though, any criticism he gets goes with the office and the politics. But geez, even if he can be that insensitive, consider how sensitive we all are. And that as our leader, we'd rather have our caring and worry portrayed to the rest of the world rather than his need to escape the worry playing golf. It almost seems like the only thing he does more than play golf is raise money from those high dollar folks who also don't seem to have a care in the world. Because they realize that in order to play the game of politics, you have to have money. And of course, it makes it a lot easier to have money if you have friends in politics. And don't tell me how he spends his time with his family is private when us average Joes have to see the families of all those victims suffering every night on the news. They don't get to escape, and neither do we. It just amazes me that all this fame and fortune that separates us from these people who used to act like we did can belong to people we put in these positions. Yeah, with all this crap they have going on, we can't escape from. We don't even have the time to figure out how we're doing in our own little personal world. And trust me, they're not going to tell us. But if and when they do you believe them? I mean, the government would never lie to us, because they know if they did, we'd be able to figure it out and expose them. Yeah, right. Did you listen to the so-called architect of Obamacare who's been saying that lying to us is a political advantage to them because our stupidity wouldn't allow us to make the right decisions? What a bunch of elitist crap. And you know, it comes from the top down. Remember just before his last election, when Obama leaned in to whisper to that new president of Russia about our missile defense plans in Europe and didn't realize his mic was on, and said that after this election, he'll have more flexibility to deal with it? In other words, once the election's over and we voters are out of the way, he could do whatever he wants. What the hell do you call that? I think that's some pretty serious shit. I mean, you got all these big shots just treating us like crap and doing whatever they want, whether it's good for the good for us citizens or not. At least Trent Lott waited until he was out of office before someone called him a traitor for joining the other side. And they think we're so ignorant. And they're so smart and that it would be better for us if we didn't know what was going on around us. Unfortunately, maybe that's the impression we give. But I can tell you though, if you're just an average Joe, you're smart enough to know you're not doing so good. And that's just from what we know. Who knows what we don't? I mean, of course, every day we forget something that we knew we would never be able to forget no matter what else happened. Remember that Malaysian flight that disappeared over the Indian Ocean? I forgot all about it. It's because somebody else is deciding what's important to us. And that just got left off their top 10. It's like one day I'm watching what started out to be a peaceful protest in Hong Kong, beginning to get testy because of the challenge to China. And then when I turn on TV the next day, it appears it turned into an uprising met with military force until I find out I'm watching the result of the Arab Spring in Egypt. So then the next day I turn on the TV and see how that violence has escalated into riots with businesses getting burned down and the military unable to control the looting of a bunch of crazed thugs, and then all of a sudden I realize I'm watching the goings-on of Ferguson, Missouri. And so that's all that's on the news from then on. And I don't know what happened to the big news in Hong Kong or Egypt or ISIS or the Ukraine. I mean, holy crap. I mean, who is it telling us what's news anymore? Who's deciding what we're going to watch? Now, I don't know about you, but I've been trying to listen to figure stuff out, and the only people I hear telling us what's going on are people in the news with an English accent. And that's another thing. Maybe that's part of the problem. I don't understand what they're saying. And Who are these people? Where'd they all come from? All I know is that they're everywhere, and their accent makes them sound so smart. Maybe it makes us think that they know more than we do. I mean, we're just average Joes and Janes who talk like this. What could we possibly know? But I know what I know, and I used to think I knew a lot more than I did. And maybe you know a lot more about this stuff than I do. But I got to tell you, either we can't figure out why all this stuff is happening, or we're just ignoring it and giving up control to somebody else to tell us what to do. And the way things are going, we better figure it out and make up our minds to start running our own lives again. You know, I don't care whether we're Republicans or Democrats or independents, libertarians, liberals, conservatives. We're trying to occupy a Tea Party. I don't expect us to agree with everything we say. But right now, there's a lot of us folks who don't know where we're going. And that's the best place and the best way to get somewhere we've never been. I mean, do you ever get the feeling that something's changed about us? Not just that we used to know what was going on, but we had an opinion on what's happening. Now it's almost like we don't want to even think of any of it. We'd even rather listen to foreigners tell us how to think. And it's all gotten so complicated and out of reach. Average Joe stuff that seems to have gotten way over our heads. It's like we can't think for ourselves anymore when we used to have all the answers. And we spend so much of our time trying to escape what we know, we'll never be able to change what's going on. I mean, there's football, basketball, and every other sporting event on every night and weekends that now have both men and women watching. And then there's sprint car, NASCAR, Prost car. Wait a minute, Prost car, that's what I take for my prostate so I don't have to get up all night. Another distraction. But then there's Dancing with the Stars, American Idol, The Voice, and America's Got Talent to take our minds off what we as Americans used to have. And now we don't even have enough information to know what questions to ask. I just don't know anymore. So it's nice to have a conversation with somebody who wants to think for themselves, like us. You know, just the other day I was trying to find somebody who knew something about this green movement stuff and how it can really have a positive impact on our lives. Yeah, something positive for a change. Just trying to find something a little more uplifting to think about. Anyway, like using Mother Nature to supply us with all the energy we need free of charge. Well, maybe not exactly for free, since I guess someone else is in charge of how we get it from Mother Nature. But I was thinking, it should be free. Too bad we just can't have a direct line to nature without the middleman. I mean, can you imagine if, instead of wasting all the money they do, the government just gave everyone the equipment to get free energy from our environment? So that all we're spending now on heat and electric, we could spend on other things that would help stimulate the economy. Think about it. That's a hell of a lot of money. You know, they should have given us the $500 million to spend on solar instead of Solyndra. That company had spent all that money making sure their executives didn't have to worry about their utility bills. Can you imagine if the government would have just invested, let's say, $2,500 to provide solar heat or electricity to 200,000 families with that money? Companies would have been falling all over themselves to try and manufacture a $2,500 unit. You see, it starts with creating the demand. You'd think everybody would know that, but government always seems hell-bent on helping big business out by having them build up supply first, putting the cart before the horse. I think that's where the term ass backwards comes from. They gave it to the companies they give all this money to the companies who use it for their own benefit, while the money that we would have all saved in energy costs, we would have spent to stimulate the economy. Hello? And then there would have been more money to offer tax credits for more energy savings, as well as other ideas that would have put more money in our pockets. Of course, the utility companies wouldn't want that. And if it's not good for them, it's not good for the coal industry that sells them the coal to make electricity, or the railroads that transports the coal, or the heating, oil, or gas companies who heat our homes, or the stockholders who own those industries. But at least it would have given us a chance, rather than throw that money down a rat hole with a bunch of rats. Why does government always think of the corporations instead of thinking about us citizens who not only pay government bills, but also elect these people supposedly running the government? Whose side are they on? I mean, these corporations don't create jobs with money from the government. People create jobs by having money to spend on stuff. We could have spent all that money we saved on utilities at businesses that hired more people to keep up with our demand. Come to think of it, that's how it used to be. Instead of paying thousands for equipment to get energy and having hundreds added to our utility bill every month, or having government give our money away to their supporters, we used to just reach out to the sun and wind. Remember? We used to conserve without being told because it made sense. And we didn't have the equipment that someone invented and convinced us we had to have and pay for. As a matter of fact, we were much greener than we are today. But then our parents did stuff like return milk bottles, soda bottles, and beer bottles to the store. The store sent them back to the plant to be washed, sterilized, and refilled, so it could use the same bottles over and over. So they really were recycled. Now, if we're lucky, we throw stuff in separate garbage cans so that they can spend more money than they save to separate and chop up and melt to reuse the same material to form bottles and cans. Yeah, they spend more than they save. Way back when, they used to pay our parents money to get the containers back, remember? And they got them back because if our parents didn't take them back, we kids would. We'd even go around the neighborhood collecting as many bottles as we could for spending money. You know, back then it seemed like everything had a use and a reuse. Now we have all these indestructible, pesky plastic bags and bottles that fill our landfills. Remember how grocery stores used to use brown paper sacks or bags that we reused for all kinds of things besides the handy garbage bags, like wrapping our school books. So anyway, now the government is threatening to do away with plastic bags, which is probably a good idea, but then charging us for using paper bags. Why not have the grocery stores go back to using paper and paying for it like it used to be? But I guess they figured out a way around having corporations pay by having us pay. What's the deal? And how many plastic bottles do we use? And what's going to happen when they find out that there's something toxic with the plastic? Oh, they already found that out. And we're still using plastic. And there have been studies that show water out of the tap is better than water from a bottle. Way back when, people would have thought we were crazy to pay for bottled water. And I guess it would look stupid if we now wrapped laptops in a reused paper sack like we did school books, although we'd be able to identify which laptop was ours, while appearing very frugal to those uptight Apple users. But don't get me started on computers. I mean, they've almost completely taken over the function of our minds and bodies. We've now got computers thinking and running for us. Pretty soon, the only thing we'll be able to do on our own will be sleeping, while the computers are still awake and working and playing and plotting against us, making believe they're not able to do anything else but what we tell them to do. And we used to be so much healthier, even just walking where we had to go. Now, I live 3 blocks from the gym, and instead of just walking back and forth for my exercise, I hop in a 300 horsepower machine and drive so I can walk on a treadmill operated by electricity at the gym where I have to pay to exercise. All that equipment, using all that electricity, making our lives so much easier as we spend our time on an electric treadmill that should be powered by us walking and creating electricity that is sent to power lines, giving us more energy and lowering its cost. Yeah, back then, we saved money and energy and got in better shape. And it was better. Same with our clothes. Remember, they were all driving a clothesline, using wooden clothespins to hold them on a long piece of rope, not an energy-gobbling machine burning up 220 volts. It was really wind and solar power drying our clothes back then, and we didn't have to use bounce to make our clothes smell like the fresh air. And the air did seem fresher. Of course, now we pollute it when we fire up an engine and burn gasoline just to cut the lawn, when we used to use a push mower that ran on human power, breathing in clean air as we walked behind it. And the grass seemed greener back then. Okay, maybe that's a stretch, but besides, who mows their lawn nowadays anyway? Now we even have to pay someone else to hold on to that self-powered mower around the yard while we lay on the couch watching a football game. Yeah, things were different back then, and life seemed so much simpler and more personal, and a whole hell of a lot less expensive. And we seemed to have more control over our lives, and we're thankful for having what we needed. Then big business, with the help of big government, convinced us we needed bigger houses and newer cars and more credit that put us in the red and the corporations in the black. Remember when there was only one TV in the house, not a TV in every room? So if you wanted to watch TV, you actually had to walk to the room with the TV and maybe even get to see other members of your family who unfortunately had to watch the same program. And the parental controls were controlled by the person who bought the TV and was changing the channels. And there were 2 or 3 channels that kept us from going outside for an hour or two at night that have now become hundreds on cable to make sure that there'll always be something to distract us from doing anything else. Oh, and remember that we were charged for cable since they wouldn't have any commercials. Now it seems like there's more commercials on cable than regular TV. Thank God for PBS. And since this next generation doesn't remember, the few cable companies that seem to have a near monopoly on the market can charge us whatever they want for what should be free TV. Yeah, now they get money from us as well as the advertisers. If you can remember, ask somebody about that. Ask your local politician who gets those big campaign contributions from the cable industry. And you would think the more people who are using something, the cheaper it would get. The times are different, and we're all consuming so much more of a better life that we don't think about what it costs until it's too late and we can't afford it anymore. It's like nail guns instead of a hammer. Look how quick they can put up a house, and yet the costs are still the same. And the worst thing that could happen with a hammer is you hit your thumb. A nail gun could attach your hand to a wall. Hopefully there'll be somebody else around with a hammer to pry the nail out of your hand and the wall it's attached to, and then put you on their bike and pedal you to the hospital. Of course, you can find out in 10 seconds what to do for a nail wound caused by a nail gun, or anything else you want to know on a computer that would have caused you to have to walk to the library and look up stuff on a card catalog. So I guess that comparison would show how efficient our lives have become. Until you start thinking about the exercise you would get walking and the people you would meet along the way and at the library. Sure, you get a lot more information in a shorter period of time. But then you have to join a dating service to try and meet someone that you could have met with the same interests you have while reaching for the same book. Yeah, and we didn't have PlayStations, Nintendos, and Xboxes. There were no video games or a couple of hundred channels on your cable TV or MySpace or YourSpace or Facebook or Twitter or chat rooms. But we had actual friends that we knew were real and had real voices and real smiles, and we went outside, really saw them, and walked and talked and played. And like the clothesline that dried the clothes, it was all real, without any additives to make any of us look or smell better. And green really was green. It was a lot cheaper and better for our environment. Now we need to convince those people we elected to office of that fact. And that while they get all these campaign contributions from businesses that benefit from our money they give away, that it was our votes that got them elected. They need to figure out how to put that money back in our pockets instead of it going in theirs. And while times have changed, we understand the game that they're playing no longer benefits us. And while we don't talk with English accents, we're smart enough to figure out that they don't think we're smart enough to figure it out. Oh, and the next time we see that young couple driving around that electric car with that smug green attitude, before giving them the thumbs up for protecting our environment from all those harmful emissions, think about all those coal-fired electric plants with trainload after trainload of coal delivered from giant pits in the ground to the plants billowing out all that toxic smoke as it makes that electricity going through all those radiating high voltage wires leading into that clean little electric plug. that makes it seem like such a perfect solution. Instead of just coming full circle for a lot more money and pollution, thanks to the contributions and tax breaks of a government that doesn't want us to know what's going on. Oh, and then they tell us that with the price of gas dropping, how it's going to be bad for the government and the economy, and that they may have to raise taxes. For them it's bad because the government is not getting their usual share of taxes and fees on gas. Of course, when the government gets it, we don't see it again. And a lot of it goes down that rat hole with a bunch of their rat friends. But when the price of gas drops, we see it again and again and again, because there's a multiplier effect. We go out to eat more, and our waitress and restaurant owner gets to go shopping for more clothes for their family, and the clothes store owner gets to buy tires for their car, and the tire store owner gets to buy a new car. And so it goes on, with the government actually getting more taxes back than if they just took that money out of our pockets, since we're stupid, too stupid, to know how to spend it.